Just on my way to the grocery store right now. It's going to be my first car vlog, driving on the opposite side of the road as I'm accustomed. Just need to go grab some milk, meat, and eggs. I just wanted to share some thoughts about nutrition and about some of the erroneous prevailing paradigms that we find ourselves amidst, even halfway around the world now in Australia. And I just want to talk about a few conversations that I've had lately with some of the native Aussies here, and just to give you a sense of how many layers deep these erroneous narratives percolate the mainstream consciousness. So about a week ago, I went to the Australia Red Cross and I donated some blood. I'm still trying to get my ferritin down closer to hopefully around 100. It's nice because the Australia Red Cross, unbeknownst to me, they certainly don't do this in America, but what they actually do is you do a 500 milliliter donation. It's 13% of your total blood supply in circulation. They take 30 mils of that and they do various tests, right? They want to make sure you don't have STDs or any, not endocrine disrupting chemicals, but any frankly illicit drugs in your blood supply that they shouldn't be, passing along to the next person. And one of the tests that they do as well is ferritin. And this is a protein that serves as a really good proxy for your stored iron. And it's something that has negative feedback on the HPTA, the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, and it can potentially downregulate your test production. And this past December 2023, I actually tested at in excess of 500. I just had a sky high ferritin level. And what I had been doing for about a year leading up to that is concomitantly consuming my vitamin C, ascorbic acid supplement, 500 milligrams, with each meal. So I was literally getting half of a pound of meat with 500 milligrams of vitamin C per meal, so twice a day. And that resulted in a really high ferritin level. So I did a blood donation before I flew to Australia, and that helped get my ferritin down to, I believe, around the mid 100s. But I would like to ideally get that down, not necessarily to double digits, but hovering as close to 100 as possible is my goal. Anyway, while I'm there, they do the typical finger prick and they measure something called hemoglobin, and it serves as a proxy for ferritin. Unfortunately, there's no way to immediately test for ferritin. They do that later on the back end. But I've always had really good hemoglobin levels, 15, 16. One time it was 17. And that's part and parcel because of the red meat that I consume per day. But then the lady that was working there for the Red Cross was just commenting on the importance of dark leafy greens. A really nice lady, by the way. I really enjoyed my time with her. We were talking about a power red donation. That's not something that they currently do here in Australia, but nevertheless, she was really pedestalizing the importance of leafy greens, which have no place in my diet. I don't consume vegetables. I think they're highly overrated, and personally, I just feel my best without them because I think ultimately they are a net negative. I mean, they're certainly not as deleterious as refined, bleached, and deodorized industrial seed oils, quote unquote vegetable oils. But they're not really doing you any service. There's no real utility for them in my diet. I do like the antioxidant augmentation that fruits offer, and with minimal downside, minimal anti-nutrients that are going to compromise, for example, the absorption of the otherwise bioavailable minerals that I have in my diet that I'm really leaning heavily on beef to supply. So that was one conversation that I had about a week ago. A conversation I had yesterday was with someone who actually works at the mall that I'm driving to right now, Carly, and she was just this really cute, feminine worker trying to recruit people to donate to Starlight, I believe is the name of it. And long story short is, I think there was a minimum age for the donation, and she was surprised that I'm 30 years old, right? And then she was saying, oh, you must be plant-based, right? Just like the lady who works with the Australia Red Cross, thinking that I eat a lot of dark leafy greens, which I consume none of the above. Like the only plant-based foods that I consume is white rice, basmati specifically, sometimes wild blueberries, if I get a chance, and pomegranate juice, 100% pomegranate juice. That's really it in terms of my day-to-day. But I just find interesting how pervasive this narrative is about plant-based being the creme de la creme of health and what's actually going to get you there. And again, like there's nothing wrong with incorporating veggies into your diet, but ultimately just have to think a little bit more here, driving on the other side of the road. This has been a really good exercise, by the way, cognitively. So I don't know if you've ever played Mario Kart before, but like you get used to driving in a certain direction on the track, and you can drive the mirror image of that track. And obviously the first handful of times you do it, like your times just plummet. They just go down the drain into the toilet. And it just takes time really greasing the new grooves, as it were. So I'm not quite as at ease as I was driving in America, especially being on the other side of the car too. It's kind of weird positionally, and it definitely has to make me think. I'm not unconsciously competent as a driver. That is unfortunate. I would say I'm consciously competent right now. But anywho, if you ever do drive on the other side of the road, just remember like roundabouts, rotaries are also the opposite way. So you go clockwise as opposed to counterclockwise here. So that's definitely something to get acclimated to. And then the blinker's all off too, like I'm blinkering with my right hand. It's kind of crazy. There's this place called Woolies, Woolworths. Aussies will tend to shorten their words here. And let's see, we'll find a parking spot here. Wrap up this car vlog here. Like I said, just going to grab some milk, meat, and eggs. Really good nutrition here. Been really, really satisfied. So in America, one thing that you'll see is beef that is advertised as grass-fed, right? Like that's the big thing. And here, to be honest with you, grass-fed is a little bit of a scam. And I say that because, to be honest with you, and I flew my drone out recently to get some B-roll of this, is that there's so much farmland that grass-fed is just the assumption. It's actually cheaper for the cows here to be grass-fed because there's so much land for them to graze on. It's just their natural habitat. So what grass-fed means here is that they weren't grain finished for the last 24 hours of their life. And so, as I said, it's kind of unnecessary. In America, grass-fed is definitely necessary, especially if you care about the DHA content and you're trying to get a good direct source of that essential fat. But in Australia, you don't have to go out of your way, which is really nice. The food quality here is really great. But yeah, just the few conversations that I've had with people, not unlike people that I would talk to in America. It's just interesting how that narrative that I'm just so far removed from now is still persistent to this day. And so my goal with this channel, with this information, is to just take you by the hand and just give you an accurate map. I can remember just coming into contact with the guy that I'm living with now, Luke, 8-9 years ago, and I had just been brought to my knees, not least by a disease that made my esophagus so inflamed that I could barely swallow food. I was just talking to this stranger today about it. She was waiting for the bus to come around for public transit. And actually, that's another good example. I was talking, to this girl today about just my past, being a pharmacist for 5 years and just seeing the drug-riddled society and the fact that doctors take a set of symptoms, and they then utter a sequence of syllables. They don't actually diagnose the underlying root cause. And I just believe in what Hippocrates said, which is to let food be thy medicine. But then the question becomes necessarily, what is the best food to fuel ourselves? Because yes, you do become what you eat, and that's not least evidenced by the fatty acid composition of all of the cells in your body. And I was fortunate enough to have my friend Susan actually assay the fatty acid composition, so the phospholipid bilayer of my red blood cells in circulation. And what she found was, and I'll have to pull up the email, was I believe it was 7.7% linoleic acid. I also did an adipose tissue biopsy test. I'm really sorry about this, but I kind of pussied out and I bought like, I don't know how many millimeters it was, not enough clearly. It may have been just a 3 millimeter punch biopsy, maybe even 2. I kind of pussied out on this. And unfortunately there was not enough for her to actually elucidate what my percent linoleic acid was in adipose tissue. I just wanted to show people that. I thought that would have been really cool. But basically the adipose tissue composition is a lagging measure of the amount in your erythrocytes and the phospholipid bilayer of your red blood cells. So ostensibly I do have a single digit LA in my body fat. It's just I wasn't able to show that, unfortunately. But that's a good example of something that conventional wisdom or dietary guidelines will tell you to consume like 17 grams of per day. And it's like in the movie Sully, Tom Hanks is just like, can we get serious now? Can we get serious now? And just cut the LA, cut the shit. Subtract the seed oils before they subtract you. Eat meat, milk if you have the genetics for that. Eggs, dairy, maybe a little bit of beef liver. Get your antioxidants from somewhere. I like to supplement vitamin C, E. I'll take a couple shots of pomegranate juice per day, or I'll actually sip on it between sets in my workout to help replenish muscle glycogen, because the demands of weightlifting are met by muscle glycogen. And my goal is really just to give people this information. I mean, I was someone who was struggling just getting food down and struggling with enduring the consequences of a rejection from a girl that I was just head over heels in love with. And that really brought me to my knees. And basically what happened is I got to the point where I had lost everything, and it freed up my hand to reach out and grab anything. And I hope you're equally receptive. I just happen to be very receptive because I was brought to my knees and I'm just like, man, I'm like, my hair is on fire. I will do anything for a bucket of water. And needless to say, I was very thirsty for this information that my friend and mentor Luke offered me. And I hope you're equally interested in this information, and I hope you really leverage it. I hope you pay forward these nuggets, these pearls of wisdom to friends, family members, people that you care about. I saved this, this is funny. I saved this girl, Emma, from Seed Oils, who was working at the mall a couple weeks ago, but it turned out that she was already clued into it. It's so interesting to me how some people are so skeptical and they will deem these anti-vegetable oil individuals as conspiracy theorists, and then other people like Emma, they're just like, oh yeah, like that's total bullshit. Like grapeseed oil was not designed to be in our bodies. So I find it interesting because I'm someone who, quite frankly, I don't pedestalize the ancestral argument. Just because we haven't been accustomed to eating that much linoleic acid, all else aside, in and of itself, I take that with a grain of salt. I take everything with a grain of salt. I don't think the way that we lived ancestrally can be assumed to be optimal for human health. And so in my mind, what this comes down to is, do you value hard science, mechanistic data, such as linoleic acid increasing LDL susceptibility to oxidation, which then results, and this is well established, the recruitment of the immune system and results in the net deposition of plaque? That happens every single time. Linoleic acid does increase LDL susceptibility to oxidation. PUFAs, polyunsaturated fats, do have, by definition, double bonds that are more prone to oxidative attack. That happens every time. What doesn't happen every time are these human outcome studies that don't every time point in the same direction. You can't lean on those. But the problem is that people cannot unsee that. And so they look at that, and what they're looking at, unbeknownst to them, is a landfill of trash. It's garbage. It's total garbage. But they think because they've got a lot of it that it's actually substantive. And it is quantitatively, but quantitative information is nothing without qualitative context. You have to contextualize the data, the information. Those human outcome studies, they don't mean jack because they don't exactly corroborate with one another, do they? And that's what I loved about Luke, is that he actually independently erected his own nutritional paradigm merely based off of solid bricks, not broken ones. There's no broken pieces in his paradigm. It resolves everything. It connects all of the dots, and it just makes sense. And I hope it makes sense to you, and I hope you're on board with just putting the health back in humanity. Just getting really healthy, feeling good, being high vibe, and basically just taking the stick out of our butts, not taking ourselves so seriously, but still respecting the importance of what we put into our body and encouraging and inspiring others to follow suit. I love you very much. Drop a comment down below. What is your major takeaway from this? Have you subtracted seed oils? Have you saved a stranger from seed oils? I want to know. I love you very much. And until next time, my friend, find your freedom. Peace.